Traditionally, Matplotlib's pyplot functions are used for creating single plots. However, for visualizing complex data or comparing datasets, it's often helpful to create multiple plots within the same figure. Subplots are a powerful feature in Matplotlib that allow you to arrange multiple plots within a single figure. To get started, let's import the necessary libraries and set up our data. So, as always, let's import Matplotlib, followed by pyplot, and as plt. And also, we're going to need pandas for this. So let's import pandas as pd. Next, I will import our data. I have prepared a data set that we're going to be using, and this is going to be the date, temperature, and humidity. And we're going to convert that into a data frame. And if we take a look at our data frame, this is our data that we're going to be using. To start creating subplots, we're going to be using the subplots method from Matplotlib. So we're going to be using plt.subplots, and calling this method without any arguments creates a single one-by-one subplot configuration, ideal for cases where you need one plot but prefer using the object-oriented interface. This method returns two objects. One is the fig, and the other is the ax. The fig is the entire figure object, and the ax or axis represents the individual plot area within the figure. Instead of using plt.plot method, we can use the ax object to plot data. This method is recommended when you want better control over individual plots. To plot our data, we'll use the ax object followed by the plot method. And similarly as we did before, in our plot method, we'll provide the x, y data and the label that we're going to be using. So our x is going to be the dates from the data frame. So we use our data frame df and provide the date column. For our y axis, we'll use the temperature data. So we'll pass in the temperature column. And finally, we will add the label parameter, and we will label it as temperature. Now, we could also add X labels and Y labels. So we will do x.set X label, and that's going to be the date. And similarly for the Y, we'll name it temperature in Celsius, and we'll add the title, and we're going to call it daily temperature. And of course, we would like to include our legend as well. And then finally, to be able to plot this, we will use the plt and then the show method. And when we run this, we made a small mistake here, of course. And one more small mistake here. X doesn't have a title method, but a set title. And when we run this again, we have our subplot. So far, we've only created one subplot. But if we want to create multiple subplots, we will need to specify the number of rows and columns when calling the plt.subplots method. So we'll go back to our code here, and in our subplots method, we will put in 2 rows and 1 column. This will create 2 separate plots, one at the top and one at the bottom. To plot at the top subplot, we will need to change or specify exactly which subplot we want to plot to. So here next to our X object, we will add an index to represent which subplot. For this first subplot at the top, it will represent it as a 0. So we will copy this for each of these. And this will plot to the subplot at the top, which will be the first subplot. And that subplot is indexed with the index of 0. Now, if we want to plot to the second subplot, let's copy this data. And instead of providing the temperature, we'll be providing the humidity, because we have another column here from our data frame which is about humidity. And we'll just copy this and change this to humidity. We'll change the label to humidity as well. And let's give it a different color. Let's say it could be orange. We could change the title to humidity over time. And the Y label could be humidity in percent. And of course the date stays as the date. And for the index, we'll change this to 1. And when we run this, we can see we now have 2 plots. Now, to clean this up a little bit, we see that the dates are kind of smushed together and the x-axis of dates is kind of overlapping here, so it's not really neat. So let's clean that up. To fix the x-axis, we could use the tick params method. So let's do x0 for the first subplot. And we'll use tick params for tick parameters. And we will select the x-axis. And what we want to do is rotate it by 45 degrees. Oops, sorry, rotation. So this will change the position of the dates so that they're slightly slanted to make it more readable. And we'll just copy and paste this here for the second legend as well. The dates are a little bit better, but these two subplots are kind of still overlapping each other. So to fix that even further, we'll use the tight layout method. And so this will prevent these subplots from overlapping. And when we run that, now we have everything nice and neat. So these two subplots are now overlapping each other, the dates are now overlapping each other, and now everything is nice and readable. When working with multiple subplots, you can share the x-axis or y-axis to avoid redundant labels and create a cleaner look. To do that, we have to go back to our code here again. And in the subplots, we have one more parameter called share x. And we can set that to true. And now we'll be able to share the x-axis between the plots. And since we're going to be sharing the axis, we could get rid of one of these x-axes. So we could get rid of the x-axis from the top plot. And we could delete this line as well. And we could leave the bottom one, since the bottom one is going to be enough. And we can also share one common title instead of having two separate titles. So we could delete the titles from both subplots. And instead, we can create one common title between the two subplots. And to do that, we'll use the fig object and then the soup title. And here we could provide one common title. So let's call it temperature and humidity over time. Okay. And now when we run this, we have one common title and we have one x-axis neatly created and shared between the two subplots. In cases where you want to separate visualizations into different figures, you can create multiple figure objects using the plt.figure method. So going back to our code here, instead of using the subplots, we are going to be using the plt.figure first, and we'll create fig1 to represent the first figure, and plt.figure. Next, to use the axes object, we will create a ax1 object from the fig1 object, and using the add subplot. And we will add 1, 1, 1 here to this add subplot, which basically represents the number of rows, the number of columns, and the number of subplots for each digit. Now with the axes object, we could change these a little slightly to x1 because we'll be reusing them. And we will add an x-axis here as well. So we'll put that back, set x label to date, and let's put the title back as well. And we will also add our tick params here. So we'll just copy it from here, and we'll use ax1 instead, and get rid of this one. So that will make our text nice and neat. And similarly here, we just need to change this to ax2. First, also, we need to copy this over, actually both of these. Copy them over here. And we're going to generate a fig2. And using fig2, we're going to generate an ax2. This stays the same because we want the same amount, which is the number of rows, columns, and the number of subplots, which is 1, for this separate figure. And we'll change all these to ax2. And we could add ax2.set title, which is humidity over time. And we can remove this. And when we run this, we get 2 separate figures with our data. Become a member at AILearningHub.io and get access to personalized mentor guidance, early access to AI resources, help with AI projects, and a great learning community.